Mr. Secretary General, what would you say are the deepest challenges that the world faces today?
Well, I think we today face three big challenges. One is the COVID. The pandemic is there, and it has had devastating effects in relation to public health, but also in the lives of people, but also in relation to the economy around the world. And this is particularly worrying when we see developing countries in which enormous efforts have been made in the eradication of poverty, in the eradication of hunger, and unfortunately things are not now are being put into question. The second is climate change. Climate change is a global threat to us and to the planet. It is probably the defining issue of our time, and it's absolutely essential to mobilize the whole world to defeat it. And the third is exactly that multiplication of small conflicts. The fact that conflicts are becoming more and more interlinked. If you see what happens in Syria, it's linked to Yemen, it's linked to Libya, it's linked to the Palestinian-Israeli thing that is not solved. It's linked to the problems in Afghanistan. And they are all linked to the question of global terrorism, which is a new kind of threat. Terrorism, there was always terrorism, but this kind of global terrorism is particularly worrying. And so these three challenges are dramatic challenges that we face, and we need to be able to defeat them.
How has COVID-19 deepened these challenges and reversed the gains that were made up till this point?
Well, dramatically, as you can imagine. I mean, if we have the largest reduction of wealth since the Great Depression, that, of course, has undermined all our efforts for the eradication of poverty, for the eradication of hunger. Food security is now deeply threatened in different parts of the world. All the efforts that were being made, even to reduce inequalities in several societies, because the pandemic increases the inequality. I mean, look into societies in which the most vulnerable people suffer more because they have worse treatment, they have more percentage of people dying, etc. So the pandemic is an accelerator of inequality. And at the same time, the pandemic is making mediation more difficult, diplomacy more difficult, making it more complicated for us to address conflict situations in the world. And so it is true that we need very quickly to transform this problem into an opportunity. And the opportunity is, now that we need to invest trillions of US dollars in the world, and that money is being invested, especially in the developed world, and it's essential to have solidarity also for the developing world to be able to do the same. Trillions are being invested and will be invested for the recovery. That recovery needs to make us change. We should not rebuild exactly as we were. We need to rebuild in a more sustainable and inclusive way, with more equality and less discrimination, and at the same time, more green, less brown, with renewable energy instead of fossil fuels, with an investment in green jobs. So if we are able to take profit of this opportunity to channel the investments in the right direction, then hopefully in the near future we will see that the COVID, that was a dramatic problem, also created an opportunity to change for the better.
The US has made clear its position on the UN, left UN agencies, abandoned international agreements, but the US remains an important partner in the UN's work. How do you navigate that relationship?
With pragmatism. I think we need to be pragmatic, we need to be practical. Wherever there are problems, we need to have the capacity to control the damage, and wherever there are opportunities, to seize those opportunities in order to have positive aspects of cooperation that are happening in different areas and different parts of the world for different reasons. I think what for me is clear is that independently of the skepticism that exists in areas of the US, but also other areas of the world about multilateralism, for me it's clear that when we face the fragilities of the world, when we face the challenges that we have, no country can do it alone. We need to do it together. So we do not need less multilateralism. We need more multilateralism. We don't need a weaker multilateralism. We need a strengthened multilateralism. We need more international cooperation, not less international cooperation. And it is also clear for me that if national sovereignty is a fundamental pillar of the Charter of the United Nations, nobody wants a global government, but we need to improve our global governance. And the countries need to be able to share more of their strategies, of their objectives, of their responsibilities in order to be able to address these huge fragilities and challenges that we face. And my hope is that everywhere, in the US, in Europe, in Asia, everywhere, people will progressively understand this and recognize that this is the time for international organizations to be supported, and this is the time for multilateral cooperation to be strengthened.
What about the UN's relationship with China?
China has been very committed to multilateralism. China plays today a very important role in different aspects of the UN activity. Peacekeeping, for instance, is an area where China has enormously developed its commitment. We have China totally supportive of the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, and very engaged in South-South cooperation. We have China at the same time following the different aspects of the activities of the UN, and we can see that it's very important for the UN that China plays a relevant role in all the pillars of our activity, from development to peace to human rights. In all aspects, we ask China to do everything in order to come and apply the values of the Charter, and in order to be a very active international operator. That is, in my opinion, very important. And as I said, we are pleased with the fact that China has been so strongly committed to multilateralism.
What would the world look like without the UN? What would the consequences be?
I've been saying many times that we face a risk, and that this risk is that the two largest economic powers in the world, the US and China, at a certain moment, for a different set of circumstances, move into a way that divides the global economy into two, with two sets of trade rules, with two dominant currencies, with two internets, with two strategies of artificial intelligence, and then inevitably that would lead to different geostrategic and military strategies. And we all know what Thucydides said, the so-called Thucydides trap, and the risks of confrontation for the future. Now, in my opinion, it is absolutely essential to move in the opposite direction. We need one global economy with one set of rules. We need one internet. We need international cooperation. And wherever there are differences, and I understand that there are differences, and there are different interests, and even different situations, imbalances in different aspects of trade or other aspects, I believe it's time for countries to come to sit together, to look into trade, intellectual property, technologies, the trust that needs to be built for people to understand that there are no risks in cooperation with each other, and to address those challenges in a pragmatic, practical way, come together and create the conditions for a united world with one set of rules and with forms of governance that apply to everybody.
The UN is 75 years old. It's time to take stock and reflect. How would you evaluate the UN's contribution to the world thus far?
Well, I think that we must recognize that this period of 75 years is probably the only period in the history of humankind where the big powers had not wars among them. We have many conflicts around the world, but not a conflict like the Second World War or the First World War or the Napoleonic Wars or others that we had in the past, in which the big powers were fighting each other. Now, unfortunately, we still have a number of smaller conflicts. It has been very difficult to create the conditions to prevent those conflicts and to solve them. Look at Syria, look at Yemen, look at Libya, look at all these situations where we see, unfortunately, that power relations having become unclear, the relationship among big powers being dysfunctional. We see that in the Security Council, the difficulties of the Security Council to take decisions. That makes it very difficult for us to invest in the mediation of conflicts, to invest in the prevention of conflicts, and to guarantee that those situations that make so many people suffer are solved once and for all. On the other hand, I think we can be very proud of the work of the UN peacekeepers, and China has today a very important role in UN peacekeeping. They have saved a huge number of lives. They have contributed for countries that were at war to become countries in peace and with a democratic evolution. Look at Sierra Leone, look at Liberia, look at Ivory Coast and Cote d'Ivoire, and we can go on and on with situations like this. The UN has a fantastic role in humanitarian aid. Half of the international humanitarian aid is channeled through the UN agencies. I was in UNHCR, the High Commission for Refugees, but I see UNICEF, World Food Programme. I mean, the work these people do, sometimes in the most dangerous areas of the world, in the most dramatic situations, to rescue lives and to help people survive, and at the same time to protect people in dramatic situations, is something we can be very proud of. The UN was able to bring together the countries of the world, both in relation to the Agenda 2030, with the program of eradication of poverty, the program that is today a global program for sustainable and inclusive development, the Sustainable Development Goals. The UN was able to bring together countries for the Paris Agreement on climate change. So there are many positive things, but at the same time, we live in a world where, unfortunately, there is not enough international cooperation. We live in a world where there are too many divisions. And we just had the COVID-19. It is a virus, a microscopic thing. And it has put us on our knees. Why? Because the world was not able to come together to fight it, because there were divisions. And this is my biggest frustration, that unfortunately the world is too much divided when we would need more than ever unity and solidarity.
The UN today reflects a world that is dramatically different from 1945. And yet the UN has come under a lot of criticism for not adapting and reforming quickly enough. What are you doing to make the UN more relevant and efficient?
Well, we have done a very important number of changes in relation to our management systems to make more simple, less bureaucratic, more agile. We have completely changed our budgetary rules and the way we manage the organization in different aspects. We brought together all the different aspects of peace and security that were divided to have a comprehensive view in the peace continuum, to try to have an action in which, from prevention to conflict resolution, to peacekeeping, and then to peace building and long-term development, we bring the whole system together, working together instead of each one doing different things. Now we have already gender parity at the top level of the organization. In the 1st of January, 180 top leaders of the UN, 90 were women, 90 were men, and I'm very proud of that. We did it 2 years in advance in relation to our plans. We are now looking also into regional diversity very strongly, because the UN was not sufficiently representative of the different areas of the world. We still have that problem, and I want to make it more representative of the different regions of the world in our staff, in our composition. So we are working a lot to make the UN more adapted to our times. But at the same time, let's be clear, big organizations tend to be slow in change. And many member states also do not want many changes. And obviously, reforms like the reform of the Security Council are very difficult. We know that. And other changes are very difficult. But at the same time, we see the UN becoming more and more a platform where people want to come. We see the business community coming to the UN. We see cities and regions coming to the UN. We see the civil society coming to the UN. We see young people coming to the UN. And another area where we made a big change was our communication capacity. We were very old-fashioned on that. Now I think we are much more interactive. And so I think we are moving in the right direction, but we need to accelerate more. And I'm never happy with what we have achieved. I also want to be able to do much more for the people, because we are here to serve the people. We the peoples, is like the charter starts. We are here to serve the people, and especially the most vulnerable people, the developing world. And in the developing world, but also in some areas of the developed world, the most vulnerable situations that suffer many times discrimination. And if we are able to work better for the people, and especially for the vulnerable people, then we will be really able to make the reforms work in the right direction.
The most important question of all, a lot of people have inquired, what makes the top diplomat in the world really, really mad?
Well, mad is probably not the word, but it's division. This is a moment, we look at the COVID, we look at climate change, we need to be humble. The world is fragile. And humility must lead to solidarity and unity. And when I see division, I feel really very sorry, and to be honest, very angry.